Argh, Not Another Podcast About Book Publishing, hosted by William May, in which the author finds himself embroiled in a podcast about book publishing.
Hey everyone. So welcome to our 17th episode where we're talking about AWP.
Hi.
How are you guys?
I'm usually waiting for Denise to chime in, but I'm doing good.
She's doing well.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Denise. Anyway, I'm good. How are you, Maggie?
I think I'm good. It's spring around here, so I'm really excited about some sunshine. Yeah, before we dive in, I know we have a lot of listeners who for sure already know what AWP is, and it has been the biggest event. And I think I've seen a little Instagram post about, okay, now that all the fuzz about AWP is over, now we can focus on submitting again. So like someone was making a joke in the industry.
Well, I mean, AWP, I mean, first of all, for those who don't know it, AWP is the Association of Writing Programs. I think that's what it stands for specifically. And actually, it's the Association of Writers and Writing Programs. So they use one W for two words, I guess, because, but anyway, it's a very large organization. It's got, I think, 50,000 writers and individual members, along with like 500 different universities and like a lot of writers' conferences and writing centers across the country that are all associated with it in one way or another. It provides a large number of different kinds of support for writers. And one of the big things that they do every year is they host a very large conference that includes also a book fair. And the conference, when I say it's large, I mean, it's like 10,000 people at this conference.
Quick question for you real quick. Since we're talking about this, you said it's a nonprofit. So how do they get their funding overall? And are they going to be at all threatened with all the stuff going on in the government right now? Because it's an American.
Well, I mean, I don't know where all their funding comes from, but like you pay to be a member.
Got it.
I mean, the conference is not free to go to. I mean, I'm sure it costs them a lot of money to put it on. But I mean, they're a nonprofit, but that doesn't mean that there aren't, things that they are charging for, which includes a lot of universities. I mean, they call it the book fair, but if I were to describe it, it's much more than just a book fair. A lot of the booths are run by different organizations that provide different kinds of either literary organizations that support writers, like universities that have MFA programs. Sure. There's also obviously a lot of publishers, both in terms of like book publishers, but also journals and things like that who are
magazines.
There.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Will, so it was your first one at AWP?
Yes. I was very lucky with Blaze Without Burning came out, over the summer, and my publisher, they are very supportive of, their authors, or at least I feel that way. Finishing Line Press, they invited me to come and do a book signing in the book fair, which, was pretty exciting. And so that was sort of what brought me to AWP for the first time.
Okay, so and if you had to sum up in one word your experience, I know that probably that's a very hard thing for a writer, but
4 words.
4 words, okay.
There is a degree to which it is so large that it's a little bit overwhelming in some ways. So I might use that word in part of it. It's also exhilarating. And I think for me, the thing that's the most powerful part of it is that as someone who's not currently in a literary community locally, that being just surrounded by writer, I mean, the number of times that I was just in a room with a bunch of other people who were writers, and we would just start talking and be like, "Oh, you want to see something that I wrote? Oh, here, you look at this, I'll look at that," and we're like, and it's you're in a creative community where everyone is kind of mutually supportive of those endeavors, and I think that's for me the thing that was, the most restorative, I guess, or the most powerful in some ways.
Yeah.
That's cool. So we've got overwhelming, exhilarating, and surrounded by kindred spirits, sort of, kind of. Would you say surrounded?
I think it's more just that sense of community, of being in that creative community, and knowing that, everyone else around you, or most everyone, is in some way aligned with within that,
Within your daily life, too. I think writers have a certain daily life. That's interesting.
Sure.
Cool. So overall, this sounds like it was a rather meaningful experience for you, correct?
I felt very enthused by, I feel very much, yes. To put it simply, it was a meaningful experience. I'm just trying to explain a little bit about it. I don't know that there really is a great explanation.
I want to ask you about, let's say 3 of your highlights, but before I ask you for your highlights, would you talk a little bit about where it was and what you thought of the city of Baltimore?
I will be honest, the conference was sort of was so big that I didn't get as much time to explore Baltimore as I might have if, on other circumstances. I did get a chance on the last night I was there. I went out with my friend Frisia, who's been on this podcast a few times, and who some of you will know from also from her work with me on Blaze Without Burning as a sort of editor when I was putting that manuscript together many years ago. And she and I went out to dinner to a restaurant called The Duchess, I think it is. It's either Duchess or The Duchess. That is, the chef is from Guam, and it's sort of Pan-Asian fusion kind of stuff with obviously the accent being on his background. And the food was really good, really exceptional. I've been to Baltimore a number of times. It's a funky little city. It's got a lot of personality, especially for a city its size. Because I always get the feeling that Baltimore is kind of on the small side as a city. And that may just be that I'm from New York, which, nothing is as big as New York in many ways, or nothing feels as, let's say, as much like a city as New York feels like a city, at least to me. And so, Baltimore, though, I feel like it punches above its weight, if that makes any sense, in terms of it's a very culturally interesting place. One of the highlights of the conference was the keynote speech, which came from Baltimore's own John Waters.
Right. I never talked about that. That must have been a highlight, obviously.
Well, it was, first of all, he was very entertaining. He's a really great speaker. I enjoyed it, but it's also I was in a room that was so big that I had to watch him on a TV screen instead of actually because he was so far away that he was as small as I should have brought opera glasses.
Real quick, listeners, exactly who he is, please.
So John Waters is probably still at this point best known for directing Hairspray, the original, not the musical. The musical was based on Hairspray, which he wrote also. He did some very, very influential, subversive films in the 70s. I think it was the 70s. Pink Flamingos is one that many people know. He was very influential in creating. He was trying to create film that was obscene and filthy and disgusting. He was not. He was doing it as an artistic statement.
Yeah, that's good. My question is, what did he bring into as the key speaker at AWP 2026 in Baltimore?
Like, first of all, in his later years, he has been more a writer than a filmmaker. He's been doing a lot of, he wrote a novel recently. He's written a couple of memoirs and different books. He wrote a book about hitchhiking, where he like literally just went around hitchhiking. But beyond that, one of the things he said was that even as a filmmaker, for him, it was always about writing. Because all of the films he ever made are films that he wrote.
Yeah.
And so, like, for him, it was more about, I wrote this thing and I want it to be a movie.
Right.
Than it was about wanting to make a movie in a certain sense. I don't know that he would put it exactly that way, but it was that the impetus, the energy that drove all of it was the writing.
The written word. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So let me ask now, because we want to have other questions for you, obviously. Give us another highlight.
There were a lot of things that I really enjoyed. Some of the panels were amazing. They have a lot of panels that, it's a professional conference. And I mean, at a lot of professional conferences, the panels are things that, it's like, oh, this is a thing about accounting. This is a thing about, keeping track of, inventory. This is a thing about whatever, like different business strategies, different things. Well, for writers, it was a very different kind of stuff. One panel that I went to that I really got a lot out of was a panel on, it was called Making an Old Thing New. And it was about research and how to dive into, history as a writer. How, like, some of it was about that line between the kind of writerly work versus an actual historian's perspective and how to navigate in some of those spaces. A lot of it was about the specifics of how a writer approached their research in a particular project. Some of it was about like personal history, like family history and things like that. Some of it was, one of the writers who's someone I actually, a writer who I've studied with a number of times and who I admire a great deal, Tim Siebels. He's a poet who he recently was working on a series of poems that are about Frederick Douglass and various conversations that he was involved in with other people. And so he's writing these poems that are trying to dive into the voices of these different characters who are real historical people. And some of them, he's like, there's a few people in the narrative who are African-American former slaves who don't know how to read and write. So there's nothing by them, no language that they wrote that survives. There are quotes and things that other people wrote down talking about, oh, I heard so-and-so say this. But he has to imagine their voices in a way, what they would have actually said, what they would have actually sounded like, in some contexts. Yeah,
they didn't record, and that's what I was going to mention. It's an interesting topic because if you look, a lot of these like cable shows, Netflix and such, Prime, they're all doing. A lot of the series are based on historical moments or times, even some historical people. And then sometimes they're even making up these characters. But there's a lot of stuff that I've noticed about a lot of stuff from the past, as, becoming more popular. Who knows what?
Sure.
Yeah. And it seems like it's more popular than it's ever been. But real quick.
I don't know whether that's true or not. I think we've always been kind of obsessed with
I think there's more outlets now. There's so many more outlets.
That's definitely true. There's more of everything now.
More of everything. So that it just seems to be a lot of it. So I think we're going to go to Melissa now because I think she has a question.
Just before we move to Melissa, Will, I remember you mentioned on one of your videos, because you shared on social media some of your experience, and now we're kind of like summing everything up and giving more of an insight. You mentioned that you visited a workshop about podcasting. So how did that go? Like, what kind of topics that they discuss? Yeah, for podcasting
in some
and
ways,
writers.
I felt like it was really a podcast more geared towards people who were looking to start podcasting and maybe hadn't yet. So there were certain aspects of it that I felt like
For beginners.
were not necessarily where I am in my journey. But and I also felt really lucky because a lot of it was like technical stuff that like I'm fortunate enough to have like a team of people working with me who can do that stuff without me having to learn how to, edit audio for myself, which would be a whole other thing, and things like that. So I felt very lucky to be kind of privileged in that way.
So you got to know our process.
Well, I mean, they were talking about the things that they use, the software that they use for certain things. They were talking about how to upload things so that they can be on an RSS feed and seen by various podcatchers and stuff like that, and how to like get on iTunes and like some of those things. And I was like, I don't know any of this and I don't need to, and I'm okay. And thank God, because I probably wouldn't be able to figure it out.
You know what? We are on episode 17, which is when did we start this, Maggie? What was the year?
2020. I want to say 23. Yeah,
I think it was. And we did, and then so we've been doing this now 3 years. So I guess we're not experts, but we're somewhere in the middle between beginners and experts. And episode 17,
we're journeyman podcasters, I suppose.
What did you say, Will?
I said we're journeyman podcasters.
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, but the point is, I did find, one of the things they talked about was, each of these podcasts, the people on the panel has a podcast that's, some degree of success. And one of the things they talked about was like how they figured out their formats and how to and that kind of stuff, which I mean, and I sort of I didn't necessarily entirely connect with everything because I'm sort of not someone who wants to have a cookie cutter format. I don't want every episode to be the same thing. And maybe that's detrimental to the health of my podcast in some way, but I would rather do a podcast that I find interesting and exciting and that I think people out there who are listening will find something new every episode than drive myself crazy doing the same thing over and over again, because I know myself and I know that would just I would just get bored doing that.
Sure, but aside from that part, I think what they also talked about is what we do is the production of it, where you have you have the intro, you have the outro, then you maybe.
I wasn't saying this in a way. I was talking about this more from that it was something that for me was insightful for me to come to understand my own process and how it varies from a lot of other podcasters and how they approach.
But it's also interesting for people to hear that there's other elements. The content itself our content is based around the world of publishing. And so, the other part of the content is the intros, the outros, how many times, if there's a longer conversation, how many we make it, the graphics, the promoting of it. So there's a lot of elements podcast, which
I really feel like I think if anybody who's been listening from the beginning of this podcast, our very first podcast was sort of about exploring all of those things and about sort of laying that aspect of the process out in the episode, and I think that's something that I definitely value, being able to talk about those aspects of it, getting into, the nitty gritty of it in a certain way, even though I'm not necessarily the technical person to do it,
Yeah, but it's content. And we also go over what we're going to talk about always beforehand. We have things written out. We have a script or questions. So we're pretty organized with it. I mean, 17 in 3 years, I don't know if that's a good number or it doesn't matter. It's a number, it's where we are. But let's move on because we want to get Melissa in with a question. Melissa, give us your question.
Of course. How did it feel to sign books and connect with readers in the atmosphere of such an event like AWP, since you had your book signing with Finishing Line Press?
Yeah, I mean, the book fair, I mean, I think it's the signing is in the book fair, and the way the book fair is set up is they have probably hundreds of different organizations that are in this very large room, and each one has a booth, essentially, like a table with, that they can set up and just have a display, have people sitting there. Some of them are more fancy, where some of them, like, there are places where it's like, spin the wheel and win a cup of coffee or a sandwich or whatever. There's things like that. There are places where they're like Norton, who's a huge publisher, had a booth. And of course, it's just a bookstore, essentially, with all of the Norton titles that you could possibly want, and then, there are journals where it's like, they have a booth and it's like, I'm an editor at this journal and we want you to submit, and here's a free copy for you to look at for, you to get an idea of what we look at, and we're open for submissions this week or next week or whatever.
So how did you feel? In other words, did you feel like, again, overwhelmed, or was it interesting?
On some level, the most overwhelming part of it for me in terms of the book fair, and this is related to my neurodiversity, was just being able to navigate it, because it's a very busy space and I don't have a good sense of direction. And it's not like the maps are really very clear. There are numbers for there are numbers on the ceiling telling you what row you're in, but knowing what that means in terms of even if it's this is row 1000, meaning the booths that start with 1000 are here. Which direction do I go to find 1027? Which direction do I go to, or whatever it is, and it's a huge area. So, I found it a little bit confusing to get around, but once I sort of got a little bit of orientation and spent some time in the space, I felt it was a pretty fun environment in large part. You're kind of just meeting people who are, there were a lot of journals that I follow that I know, that I was able to go and say, hey, I love your journal. You guys are really great. Taco Bell Quarterly was there.
Oh,
I don't know if anybody else in this room or listening to me on this podcast will know what I'm talking about, but Taco Bell Quarterly was at AWP. They rock. I love them. One day I am going to write a Taco Bell poem and submit it to Taco Bell Quarterly.
Taco Bell Quarterly to do with the restaurant Taco Bell? No. Yeah. Wow.
It's not affiliated with them in any official sense, but they're a journal that publishes poems and stories that contain some reference to Taco Bell. Every piece in their journal is in some way Taco Bell related or themed. So
oh, wow.
It would be cool if it was you. I don't use the word taco or the word bell, but you're saying the two words together.
Right. Yeah, no, you write about Taco Bell, the place, the restaurant, in some way.
Right.
And then I was, as I said, I was lucky enough to be invited by my publisher to go. Unfortunately, for various reasons, the publisher herself, Leah, wasn't able to make it to AWP. She had some family emergency stuff come up that, prevented her from getting there. And, so I was sort of a little bit but I went over, I found the booth. When I got there was another person signing with me. And so we started talking. I think I showed you, I think I showed her book. Her book is called Astral Weeks, Weeks. And it's a beautiful book. I'm going to talk about it at some point on online. I'm going to give a little bit of a review or something once I get my head together to do it.
Quick question. We have a podcast, right? About braggalocious, right? And so how did it feel for people coming over asking you to sign your book?
I mean, that's always really cool. There were a number of people who came who were people that I just randomly met at AWP who were like, you said you were doing a signing. I'm here.
That's great.
That was really exciting. I'll tell you one of the biggest highlights for me. And if you're out there listening, thank you, because you're awesome. There was a gentleman, and I'm trying to remember his name. He came, I met him like one of the first nights at an event, and he came to my signing. And then I just like happened to run into him later that day, and he was like, hey, I already like sat down and read your book, and it's great, and I want to read it again. And I was just like, it just meant a huge amount to me that, you know, here was this person who I think he runs or is part of a writing group in Washington State, and was out at AWP in Baltimore representing them. And, you know, it was just, you know, a really cool moment. And so, I mean, for me, that's why you write, you know, is for people to read it and for it to mean something. So,
yeah, that recognition. Awesome.
Yeah. I just had like one final question, which is really connected to what you just shared about this man that came to you and he read your book in, you know what, one day. So why do you think these kind of events matter for authors, especially for you know, new authors who are, you know, just starting and they probably just published their book? And what do you think is a value? What was the biggest value for you?
I mean, there are a number of things. I mean, for one, as I said, you know, it's the opportunity to be in that kind of community, and that's not just like the sort of the restorative properties of that kind of experience, but it's also being able to make certain kinds of connections. There were a number of people who I got to see who are writers that I've, you know, known for a long time, but or knew at some point, but have lost touch with or just haven't seen in many years. There are people that I like. There was, I mean, somebody I went to graduate school with who I just ran into and was able to talk to for 5 minutes. There were people who I was in school with as an undergraduate with who I ran into and was, you know, able to connect with. And then there were also like, I did a reading here in Delray a few months ago at a library in Delray, connected to an anthology that one of my poems was published in, and the Chameleon Chimera anthology. And there was a young woman who was also in the anthology who lives, she's in college, I forget exactly where right at this moment, but she was at AWP, and, you know, I ran into her, and she and Melissa have been in touch. So like, she sent Melissa, my wife, Melissa, not Melissa Nastasi, a different Melissa, that she sent her a photo of us. So it's like, you know, there's that aspect of it. There are also a lot of like, I mean, like I went to one conference, one of the panels I went to, which I know every time I say this, people are like, how could this be interesting? I went to a panel on grammar that was mind blowing, that like literally like, it was like they were kicking people away at the door was how many people wanted to get into the grammar panel, you know?
Why?
And
Why?
Because it was an exciting panel. It was about how grammar, it was sort of about what we can learn to communicate by pushing grammar, by changing grammar, by fighting grammar, by breaking grammar, by doing things that are not what grammar is normally doing.
And is it not just for the written word, but also for when speaking, or just the written word?
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, I suppose so, but this was, I mean, this was about poets using grammar. So it was largely about writing things, but I mean, a lot of the things that are possible would have a use in, I mean, like one thing that I've been thinking about recently, and this was not talked about in the panel, but it's an idea that came to me from thinking about things in the panel, is that there's an idea in certain languages called reduplication. So, for example, if you're describing something and you say, it was green, you don't just mean it was green. You mean it was greener. Like the most green.
Yeah.
It was greener than any green you can think of as just green. Or it was big means it was gigantic. It was like, this was not a big slice of cake. This was a huge slice of cake. Or, so reduplication is this idea of repeating a word to amplify its meaning. And so I've been playing with that idea as something that I could do in my poetry. Now, that's obviously something that could also be done out loud. And I'm sure there are people who come from other linguistic idioms into English who probably just do it naturally because it's how they know how to use language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very, it's fascinating. And I'm really glad we did this podcast because we didn't really have a chance. I know I spoke to you a few times while you were there. We were talking a little bit this and that, but this has really been an in-depth look at AWP and also William May at his first AWP. So it's been quite...
I hope so.
Melissa, anything you want to add or ask? Melissa?
I was on mute at the wrong time. But no, I didn't have anything additional on my end that we didn't already talk about.
I have a question for you real quick, Melissa. How do you feel being one of two William May's Melissas?
I'm the northeast version. She's the southeast.
How funny is that to have two Melissas, right? In your life.
I mean, I've I guess so. I feel very lucky to have the people in my life who I have, whatever their names may be. So, I'm suppose I'm lucky that you're not all named Melissa, because that would get confusing.
Funny. Yes. You told me actually when we first started working together, clients can't have any other Meggies in their life. So far we're good.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Thank you everyone for, tuning in. You can find William's book at his website. And also, I wanted to mention just before we close that for our next episode, we want to talk about some of the interesting emails that we've been getting. And this is just something that I believe Melissa, or AKA Harriet, our researcher, sometimes spots on a weird kind of scammy email, and there is a lot of this. So we kind of wanted to record a podcast episode about this, and I believe it's going to be because there are a lot with this AI world and everything going on. Sometimes you don't know if someone's reaching out to you, is it really them, or what's the intention behind? And so just wanted to mention that.
If you're a writer out there, it can be a little daunting. You get these things and you go like, oh wow, this is exciting, and then you go, I don't think this is what I thought it was.
Yeah, we actually. Yeah.
We've been getting a lot of interesting offers that turn out to be less interesting than they appear to be. Let's put it that way.
People portraying authors, that people that they're not. That's another part of it. But we'll get into that the next time. And Harriet, cybersecurity, our anti-scam plot person or entity is on top of it, because I don't think we've had any this week so far. So nice job, Harriet. She couldn't be on the call, folks.
I had one for me.
Oh, that's true, right? It's been great. Everybody, thank you so much. William, thank you for sharing your amazing experience at AWP 2026.
Yeah, well, makes me want to visit I'm sorry. Yeah, makes me want to visit the next year's one in 2020.
Well, next year's in Chicago, so it will be probably pretty cold, is my guess. But anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed this, and if you did, let us know. You can send us a message or leave us a review on Apple, iTunes, and wherever else podcasts are found. And, we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you come back to join us again. And if you haven't, you can check out some of our back catalog. We have 17 whole episodes at this point, I guess. So.
Everybody, that's beautiful. Everybody stay safe and everybody stay sane. These are interesting times. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Argh, Not Another Podcast About Book Publishing, is produced by Denise Marsa, Maggie Dimitrova, and William May. Please visit WilliamMayWrites.com for social media links, recited poems, and more.